She boarded the midnight flight, bone-tired and brittle, the kind of exhausted that makes the world slow and fuzzy at the edges. The cabin lights glowed in muted pools, one tiny island of strangers stretched into the dark. With a sigh, she sank into her window seat, forehead pressed to the cold glass until the chill numbed the agitation in her chest. A day of missed trains and endless delays had stolen her patience. She hadn't meant to fall asleep. But fatigue is a traitor. Her head tipped, leaning against the shoulder of the man beside her. He didn't move. He didn't shift away. If anything, he stilled, as though the world itself had stopped breathing. The hum of the plane lulled her deeper. But when turbulence jolted the cabin, her head nestled closer. That was when he felt it. A spark, faint at first, then racing through his veins like wildfire. His jaw tightened, golden eyes flashing in the dim light. He wasn't just any man. He was an alpha. She stirred, half waking, murmuring an apology, her voice husky with sleep. But when her lashes lifted and her gaze collided with his, the world changed. She was just a tired girl on a late-night flight, until destiny bound her to the Alpha King. The bond snapped into place like chains forged by the moon herself. A searing heat coiled in her chest, mirrored in his, their heartbeats syncing in an impossible rhythm. Her breath caught. His lips parted as though to speak. But words failed him. The rest of the cabin was oblivious. Subscribe now. Your heart will thank you. Flight attendants chatting softly, passengers shifting in their sleep. But here, in this fragile space between two seats, eternity seemed to bloom. She clutched her blanket tighter, confusion written across her face. He didn't look away. His stare was fierce, almost feral, yet impossibly tender, like he was seeing her and only her. The air thickened, the pull undeniable. She felt it tugging at the deepest part of her, something ancient and primal that had no business existing in her very human body. And then a voice not her own whispered in her mind, soft as moonlight, "The human will save or doom the Alpha King." Her lips parted in shock, but before she could even form a word, the plane shuddered again. Lights flickered. Gasps rose from around them. The Alpha's hand shot out, steadying her arm, his grip firm but careful. She stared at him, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might tear through her chest. He leaned closer, his voice low, rough, dangerous, and final. "You're mine." Her breath hitched as the weight of his claim settled over her, an impossible truth burning through her veins. The camera lingers on her stunned face, while outside the plane window, a sliver of silver moonlight pierces the clouds. Her chest rose and fell in rapid bursts, the hum of the plane lost beneath the thunder of her heartbeat. His words lingered in the air between them like smoke. "You're mine." "What? What did you just say?" Her voice cracked barely above a whisper, but the Alpha heard it as if she had shouted. He leaned back just enough for her to see the impossible light in his eyes. Amber glowing faintly in the dim cabin. Not contacts, not human. Something older, wilder. The spark that had flared between them hadn't died down. It was building, rippling under her skin like fire, desperate to escape. She wrapped her arms around herself as though she could hold the strange heat in. "I don't understand," she said shakily, eyes darting to the other passengers. None of them noticed. The world beyond their row was unaware, oblivious, as if they were trapped in a pocket of fate no one else could reach. "You don't need to understand." His voice was low, dangerous, yet there was something reverent in the way he looked at her. Like she was both a blessing and a curse, dropped from the heavens. "You only need to know this. What the moon has bound, No one can break. Her mouth went dry. Moonbound. It sounded insane. This was supposed to be a simple flight, a layover, a chance to escape the exhaustion of her life. Not this. He tried to turn away to put space between them, but his hand brushed against hers on the armrest. Just a touch. Bare skin against bare skin. Her body betrayed her. A gasp left her lips as a shock shot through her veins, curling her toes, making her pulse quicken. Her head spun, and she hated herself for the way she leaned closer. The way her chest rose toward him like he was gravity itself. "I don't even know you," she whispered. But her voice lacked conviction. "You will," he promised, his words an oath more than a threat. Then his jaw tightened, as though he was fighting to keep control. "I am Lucian, Alpha King of New York." "And you? And you?" He paused, staring at her like he could devour every secret she carried are mine. Her lips trembled, fear and something darker warring inside her. She wanted to scream, to laugh at the absurdity, but instead her heart betrayed her. It skipped, then skipped again. And that was when she realized her body was responding to him, not with fear, but with recognition, like she wasn't hearing this for the first time. Her stomach twisted. The weight of something ancient pressing down on her. "This can't be happening," she whispered to herself. Lucian's nostrils flared, as though he could sense every thought running through her veins. His voice dropped lower, almost a growl vibrating through her bones. "It already has." He leans closer, his mouth brushing dangerously near her ear as the cabin lights flicker once more. His growl rumbles deep, primal, inescapable. "You're mine." Her breath hitches, and against her will, her pulse sinks to his, beating in perfect rhythm. Her pulse hammered in her ears, still sinking to his, as if her body no longer belonged to her. "You're mine." His words echoed like chains around her lungs. And then, as if survival instinct finally kicked in, she tore her hand free and stumbled into the aisle. "No." Her voice cracked raw. "You don't own me." Passengers blinked, startled, but strangely, no one moved. No one asked if she was okay. Their gazes slid right past her, like she didn't exist, as if the world itself had dimmed to silence, leaving only him. Lucian's eyes glowed faintly, a predator who could wait as long as it took. He didn't rise from his seat. He didn't chase her. He simply watched, lips parting with a knowing smile, as though her fleeing was already part of the script. Her legs carried her to the tiny airplane bathroom. She locked the door, bracing her palms on the sink, breath ragged. Her reflection stared back, her own wide eyes but rimmed with shadows that hadn't been there before. And then blood. For a split second, her reflection wasn't hers. It was a girl who looked like her, drenched in crimson, wolves snarling in the blur of the glass. She stumbled back with a scream, hand clapping over her mouth. The lock on the bathroom door rattled once. "Open it." Lucian's voice, low and commanding, seeped through the barrier. Not a demand, an inevitability. She squeezed her eyes shut, shaking her head. "No, no, no." But when she opened them again, the reflection was hers once more. Normal, human, trembling. Her lungs burned as she splashed cold water on her face. "Get it together. He's insane. You're losing your mind." But the moment she slid back into her seat, the bond snapped taut again, dragging her nearer like invisible chains, yanking her into orbit. His gaze caught hers, and the heat in his eyes nearly undid her. "I don't want this," she whispered. But even as she said it, her body leaned closer, betraying her truth. Lucian tilted his head, as though hearing the contradiction between her lips and her heartbeat. "You will." That night, she finally closed her eyes in exhaustion, hoping for sleep. Instead, dreams dragged her into something darker. She stood in a forest bathed in silver light. Wolves circled her, dozens of them, their eyes glowing like dying stars. Blood stained the soil at her feet. A shadow moved between the trees, taller, larger, almost human, but not. Then a voice, soft yet all-encompassing, filled the night air. It was not Lucian's. It was not human. The human will save or doom the Alpha King. The whisper slithered through her veins, a warning, a promise. She spun, searching for the source, but the forest dissolved into mist. And there, at the heart of it, stood the moon goddess, her face half hidden by light, her hand reaching out. Choose wisely. She jolts awake mid-flight, a cold sweat dripping down her temple, only to find Lucian staring at her, eyes glowing brighter than before. You heard her, didn't you? He growls softly. The goddess never whispers without reason. Her body snapped rigid at his words. You heard her, didn't you? Lucian's golden eyes glowed faintly in the dark cabin. The goddess never whispers without reason. The seatbelt sign chimed. The plane jolted down, preparing to land. Her palms were slick with sweat. Her heartbeat a desperate drum. She wanted to deny him, to scream she had heard nothing. But the raw certainty in his gaze made lying impossible. By the time the wheels screeched against the runway, her reality had already shifted. She wasn't stepping into New York as a human girl anymore. She was stepping into a world where gods whispered prophecies and monsters wore the faces of men. But black SUVs waited on the tarmac. No terminal, no customs, no escape. His hand rested on the small of her back as they descended the steps. And though he didn't grip her, the weight of it was enough to anchor her, like chains disguised as touch. The city lights blazed in the distance, but here, in the shadows of the airfield, another world stirred. His pack was waiting. Dozens of figures emerged from the dark. Men and women with eyes too sharp, movements too precise, wolves wearing human skin. The moment they caught her scent, a ripple moved through them, shoulders stiffening, jaws clenching. She's human, someone hissed. She can't be our Micah. She'll break him. Every whispered judgment sliced into her chest. She hugged her arms around herself, wishing she could vanish into the asphalt. But Lucian stepped forward, his power rolling off him like a storm. She is mine, he growled. Just 2 words, but the earth itself seemed to listen. The murmurs died. Fear and fury tangled in the wolf's eyes, but none dared defy him outright. Hours later, she sat alone in the sprawling guest chamber, the mansion's stone walls swallowing her whole. Her suitcase lay at the foot of the bed, her only anchor to the life she once knew. The clothes she had folded carefully, the worn paperback she had been reading, the cheap perfume she'd sprayed hours before boarding the flight. Fragments of normally in a world that was anything but, until the scent of smoke hit her nose. Her head snapped up. Orange light flickered beneath the door. Panic clutched her chest as she stumbled forward and yanked. It opened. Her suitcase was engulfed in flames. The fire roared, devouring everything she had left of her old life. But it wasn't just fire. It was a warning. A single charred piece of paper curled in the heat. The words scrolled in black ink, jagged and cruel. Leave or burn next. Her knees weakened. But before she could cry out, a low laugh drifted down the hall. Female cold wolves watching from the shadows, daring her to scream. She staggers back from the flames, her heart racing when Lucian storms in, his power rattling the walls. His eyes flick from the fire to her trembling form. For the first time since she met him, his face hardens, not in dominance, but in fury. They dare threaten what's mine. he growls, the walls themselves shaking. The fire roared behind her, casting violent shadows against the stone walls. She stumbled back, chest heaving, as Lucian's power surged through the hallway. His eyes glowed molten gold, sharp enough to slice through the darkness itself. "They dare!" his voice thundered, shaking the rafters. He stepped past her, one flick of his wrist smothering the flames in a hiss of smoke. The charred remains of her suitcase crumbled to ash at his feet. "They dare threaten my mate?" She flinched, not at his rage, but at the word mate. Before she could answer, heavy footsteps echoed. The council had arrived. They filled the hall like shadows given flesh, elders and dominants, their eyes sharp with judgment, their presence suffocating. The eldest, a gaunt man with silver hair, let his gaze flick over her as if she were dirt under his boot. "Alpha King," he moaned, "we warned you. A human cannot be Micah. She is weak, fragile, and a liability." Murmurs rippled. Lucian's jaw tightened. She is chosen by the moon goddess herself. That makes her not liability, but destiny. But even as his voice thundered, she could feel the cold hatred pressing in on her. Dozens of eyes, dozens of doubts. Her body wanted to shrink, to disappear, but her soul whispered something else. "Stand tall." The silver-haired elder raised a hand. "Then let her prove it." Her breath caught. To prove it, a blood oath. Another councilwoman sneered. "Every Micah must prove her worth. If she fails," the woman's smile was all teeth, "she dies, and the goddess's choice will be revealed as false." "No," Lucian snapped, stepping forward, power rippling from his frame. "She is not ready. She is mine." That is all the proof you need. But the murmurs rose into growls, dissent spreading like wildfire. Wolves pounding fists on tables, voices snarling. Blood oath. Blood oath. Her pulse thundered. She wanted to run. She wanted to scream. She wanted to live. But Lucian's hand clenched at his side, torn between shielding her and obeying tradition. Finally, the silver-haired Eller's voice silenced the room. "One night in the forest among the ferals. If she returns at dawn, she will be Micah. If not," his gaze lingered on her, cruel and deliberate, "the problem will solve itself." The chamber erupted in agreement. Lucian turned to her, eyes blazing with fury, and something else, fear. "You don't have to do this," he whispered low, for her ears alone. Her throat tightened. She should say no. She should beg, plead, anything to escape this nightmare. But as the council's jeers filled the chamber, something inside her, something raw and defiant, rose to the surface. "If I don't try," her voice trembled, "they'll never stop coming for me." For the first time since meeting him, Lucian faltered. Night fell. The gates to the wild forest groaned open, revealing a wall of black trees, their twisted branches clawing at the sky. Beyond, feral howls echoed in the distance. Wolves broken by madness, killers who even alphas feared. The council watched from the shadows. Lucian stood at the threshold, every muscle in his body coiled to fight fate itself. But when he looked at her, his gaze softened just for a breath. "Survive," he whispered, "or I burn this world down for you." She swallowed hard, stepping into the darkness as the gates slammed shut behind her. The forest swallowed her whole. A low growl slithered through the night. Then another and another. Dozens of glowing eyes emerged between the trees, circling. The rogues had found her. The night pressed down like a living thing, every breath of wind heavy with menace. Her chest heaved as she backed away. Her palms scraped raw against the bark of a tree. Dozens of eyes glowed from the shadows, circling closer. The low snarls of feral wolves vibrating in her bones. Her heart screamed, "Run!" but her body was paralyzed, caught between terror and disbelief. These weren't normal wolves. They were broken, twisted by madness. Some moved on 3 legs, others with scars running like rivers across their muzzles. They didn't see prey. They saw a challenge. The first wolf lunged. She stumbled sideways, the creature's teeth grazing her arm before slamming into the tree where she had stood. Pain seared her flesh, the metallic taste of blood flooding her tongue as she bit back a scream. "Move!" she gasped to herself, forcing her legs to run. Branches tore at her clothes. Brambles snagged her hair, but she pushed forward, sprinting blindly through the maze of black trees. The howls followed, closer, louder, bloodthirsty. Another wolf crashed from the brush ahead, its jaws snapping inches from her throat. She fell, rolling through mud and leaves, her nails digging into the earth as she clawed herself up again. "This is it," she thought wildly. "This is where I die." But then her chest burned. Not from fear, not from exhaustion. Something else. A strange pull in her veins, as if the moon itself was inside her, demanding to be let out. She pressed a hand to her chest, staggering as light, faint, flickering, seemed to glow beneath her skin. The wolves faltered just for a moment, but hunger won. 3 lunged at once. Her scream ripped through the forest, raw and terrified, and a roar answered. The ground shook. Shadows parted. A massive black wolf slammed into the rogues, tearing them aside like broken twigs. Golden eyes blazed like fire through the night. Lucian. She collapsed against a tree as he tore through the rogues, his power unmatched, his fury terrifying. Every snap of his jaws echoed like thunder. Every swipe of his claws spilled blood into the soil. And when the last wolf whimpered and fled into the dark, he turned on her, chest heaving, his body trembling with rage and something deeper. "You would have died," he snarled, shifting back into human form, his bare chest streaked with blood and moonlight. "You shouldn't have been here. I should never have let them." He stopped himself, jaw tight, her lips parted, trembling. I almost... But her voice broke. She couldn't find the words. Lucian closed the space between them, his hand brushing her cheek, rough but trembling. "You fought," he whispered hoarsely. "You didn't break." Her throat tightened. He didn't see the fear that still noted at her. He saw only the defiance that had kept her alive. They stayed like that, the world around them silent, but for the ragged sound of their breaths. Dawn bled slowly into the forest. Soft gold cutting through the black. She lifted her hand to her chest, where pain still pulsed. But then her breath caught. Her skin shimmered faintly, a silver light radiating from beneath, swirling like liquid moonlight through her veins. Lucian froze, his eyes widened, his lips parting in shock. "What are you?" he whispered, voice raw, almost reverent. She stared at her glowing hands, horror and awe colliding. The light pulsed brighter, strong enough to outshine the dawn itself. And somewhere far beyond the trees, brokenness. The moon goddess laughed. The forest was silent, not the peaceful silence of dawn, but the breathless pause before something ancient stirred. Her hands trembled, silver light rippling beneath her skin like liquid fire, brighter and brighter, until it painted the trees in ghostly glow. Lucian didn't move. He stood rooted, chest rising and falling with uneven breaths, eyes locked on her like he was staring at an impossible vision. His voice came low, rough, barely human. "The mark," he whispered. Her lips parted, her voice trembling. "Mark." He stepped closer, his hand hesitating before he dared to brush her glowing wrist. The moment his skin touched hers, the light flared, blazing like moonlight breaking through storm clouds. His eyes widened, recognition dawning and fear shadowing it. "This isn't just power," he murmured, his voice breaking. "This is prophecy." Her heart raced. Prophecy. She was just a girl from a cramped apartment. A girl who had boarded a plane with nothing but dreams of starting over. She pulled her hand back as if denying the truth in her veins. "Tell me what it means," she demanded, her voice shaking. Lucian's jaw clenched, his golden eyes burning. The silent Micah. The words tasted like steel. A mate chosen by the moon goddess herself, marked not to speak the prophecy, but to be it. She carries both salvation and ruin. She's the bond that can crown an alpha king or destroy him. The words hit her like thunder. Her salvation, ruin. She staggered back, shaking her head. No, I'm just—" "You are mine," Lucian growled, stepping forward, his hands fisting at his sides. "And now the world will know it." Before she could respond, a sharp prickle ran across her skin. The fine hairs on her neck rose as if unseen eyes burned into her. She turned. High above, on a cliff that overlooked the forest, a shadow stood, still as stone. Tall, broad, wrapped in a cloak of wolf pelts. His piercing eyes glinted red in the fading dark. She gasped, clutching her chest, instinct screaming, "Danger!" Lucian followed her gaze, but the figure didn't move, didn't run. He only smiled faintly, lips curling in cruel amusement. The rival alpha's voice carried on the wind, like a blade. "She's the key." Her glow dimmed instantly, as if recoiling from his words. Lucian's snarl shattered the forest silence, primal and violent, echoing off the cliffs. But the rival alpha had already melted into the shadows, gone like smoke. Her knees weakened, fear gnawing at her chest. The glow inside her pulsed like a heartbeat, no longer warm, now cold, ominous. Lucian turned to her, his face carved with fury and fear. "They know," he rasped, "and if they come for you, they'll burn this city to ash." In the distance, the rival alpha's howl split the dawn, a promise of war. The rival alpha's howl still echoed in her chest as Lucian pulled her close, his golden eyes blazing. "They know," he growled, the words more curse than warning. His grip tightened protectively around her trembling hand. "And they won't stop until they rip you from me." By the time they returned to the city, the news had spread like fire on dry grass. The mark, the prophecy, the silent Micah. Whispers traveled faster than wolves could run. And when dawn broke fully, the summons came. The court of alphas. She had imagined powerful men and women in crisped suits, skyscrapers gleaming behind them, perhaps some sense of civilization. But when Lucian led her into the chamber hidden beneath Manhattan, stone walls carved with ancient runes, torches casting long shadows, her stomach dropped. It wasn't modern. It was primal, savage, the true seat of wolf power. Dozens of alphas filled the great hall, their presence suffocating. Some looked at her with disdain, others with thinly veiled fear, as though her very existence was a weapon. She felt their gazes like knives, cutting deeper than her stepmother's cruel words ever had. Lucian stood tall beside her, radiating command. But even she could hear the strain in his voice when he announced, "She is mine, chosen by the moon goddess, the silent Mika." The words rippled through the chamber like thunder. Growls rose, chairs scraped, and suddenly chaos. "You dare bind a human?" one alpha snarled, slamming his fist on the table. "She is no human now. She's a curse," spat another. "The prophecy says she can destroy kings. Hand her over before she destroys us all." Her pulse roared in her ears, her vision narrowing as the weight of their hatred pressed on her. She wanted to scream that she hadn't asked for this, that she was no threat, but her voice caught in her throat. Lucian bared his teeth, his growl shaking the hall. "She is mine. Touch her and I'll tear your pack limb from limb." The words silenced many, but not all. And in the heavy pause, the scent of bloodlust thickened the air. That was when the chamber doors slammed open. The rival alpha stepped into the firelight. Tall, broad eyes gleaming like molten embers. His presence sent a ripple through the assembly, wolves shifting uneasily in their seats. He strode forward, cloak trailing behind him, his gaze fixed solely on her. She froze, every muscle locking, because his stare wasn't just hungry, it was claiming. "Rushin," the rival alpha's voice rumbled, dark and smooth. "You hide behind prophecy to keep her, but she belongs to no king until she chooses." The hall erupted in murmurs, but he didn't flinch. He raised his hand, pointing straight at Lucian, then at her. "I challenge you, Alpha King of New York," he declared, his voice booming like thunder for her. The chamber roared with approval, with horror, with anticipation. Her knees weakened, her stomach churning. The glow beneath her skin pulsed faintly again, as if responding to the challenge, betraying her fear. Lucian's chest rose and fell, his jaw tightening, his fangs just visible. His hand slipped behind her back, anchoring her, his whisper rough and low against her ear. "They want war," he growled, "and they'll have it if he lays a hand on you." The rival alpha's eyes gleamed as he spoke his final words to the court. "The silent Micah will either crown me or break you." The chamber fell into silence, the rival alpha's challenge hanging like smoke in the air. Torches crackled, casting wild shadows on stone as every eye turned to Lucian. He didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, placing himself between her trembling form and the predator across the hall. His golden eyes locked on his rival's burning gaze. Accepted. Gasps rippled through the court. The drums of tradition began to thunder, low, deep, and primal. The duel of alphas had been declared. Within moments, the chamber was transformed. The circle was cleared, the runes on the stone floor glowing faintly as though awakened. By ancient blood, alphas pressed to the edges, their wolves restless beneath their skin. The air was thick with bloodlust, the scent of war. Lucian removed his cloak, baring his chest, scarred from countless battles. She had never seen him this way before. Every muscle taut, every line of his body carved with power. But his rival was no less formidable, towering, his presence radiating violence. Her hands shook as she stood at the edge of the circle. She wanted to scream, to beg them to stop, but her voice was locked tight in her throat. The gong struck. The duel began. They clashed like storms colliding. Fangs bared, claws flashing, flesh tore, blood sprayed, growls shook the chamber. The rival alpha struck first, his fist cracking against Lucian's jaw, sending him staggering. The court howled, half in glee, half in fear. But Lucian rose, a savage grin flashing through blood. He struck back, harder, each blow laced with dominance. Their bodies slammed into stone pillars, breaking them, shaking dust from the ceiling. It wasn't just a fight, it was an earthquake. Two kings tearing the world apart for her. Her heart hammered so hard it hurt. She wanted to move, but her legs wouldn't obey. Every strike, every growl cut through her chest as though she bore the wounds herself. The rival alpha lunged, teeth sinking into Lucian's shoulder, blood spilling hot and dark. She gasped, tears spilling down her cheeks. But then Lucian roared. With sheer force, he twisted, driving his clawed hand deep into his opponent's side. The rival staggered, eyes wide with shock, blood dripping from his mouth. Lucian shoved him to the ground, his foot pressing to his throat. The chamber erupted in chaos. Shouts, growls, cries for mercy or death. The duel was over. Lucian had won. He raised his head, golden eyes finding hers through the haze of blood and sweat. "You're mine," he rasped, victorious, his body trembling with feral triumph. Relief flooded her chest, a sob breaking from her lips. But before the chamber could settle, before his rival could even draw another breath, something inside her snapped. A scream tore from her throat. Not just a scream, an explosion. Her voice was raw, wild, filled with terror and desperation, and with it came power. The air shook. Torches blew out. Warriors dropped to their knees as if crushed by invisible force. The ground itself trembled, cracks spidering across the stone floor. The rival alpha was flung back, Lucian staggering as though struck by a storm. Silence fell. Her voice, her scream, still echoed against the walls. Her hands clutched her throat in horror. Everyone was staring at her, eyes wide, faces pale. Not at Lucian, not at the fallen rival. At her. The last torch sputtered and died, leaving only silver light streaming from her skin. Her voice had toppled warriors, silenced alphas, and shifted the battle. And somewhere in the darkness, a whisper rose. The silent Micah has spoken. The chamber was frozen in silence. Only her ragged breathing filled the air. The echo of her scream still trembling against the stone walls. The rival alpha lay broken, not by Lucian's claws, but by her voice. She stumbled back, clutching her throat. Silver light still shimmered faintly across her skin, fading slowly like dying embers. Her eyes darted to the pack, to the circle of alphas who had come to witness the duel. They weren't looking at Lucian. They weren't looking at the defeated rival. They were staring at her. Whispers rose, sharp and poisonous. "She's cursed. No human should wield that power. She'll doom us all." The pack pulled back as though she carried a plague. Even seasoned warriors who had faced rogues in battles took steps away from her. Their gazes were no longer dismissive. They were fearful. Her lips trembled. I didn't mean to." But before she could finish, Lucian's voice cracked through the chamber like thunder. "Enough!" His golden eyes burned with fury as he stepped to her side, his hand gripping her trembling wrist. Blood streaked his shoulder, but his presence was unwavering, his dominance absolute. "You will not touch her. You will not speak against her. She is mine. She is Mika of this pack." The growl in his voice silenced them, but fear still lingered in their eyes. The council exchanged wary glances, the rival alphas shifting uneasily. The victory had been his, but the power had been hers, and that unsettled them more than defeat. Lucian turned to her, softer now. His bloodied hand brushed against her cheek. "They don't understand, but I do. You are not cursed. You are chosen." Tears blurred her vision, a storm of relief and terror mixing in her chest. She wanted to believe him. But as she glanced back at the faces of the pack, she knew one truth. They would never forget what she had done. That night, the palace was tense. She lay in the Alpha's chambers, her body shivering under heavy blankets. Shadows seemed longer, whispers louder. Lucian paced near the window, muscles taut, golden eyes burning with a vow he couldn't say aloud. He would protect her against the world, even his own pack. But not everyone shared his devotion. In the courtyard, hidden beneath the cloak of night, the beta moved in silence. His sharp eyes scanned the corridors before slipping into the shadows of the training grounds where a figure already waited. The rival alpha, bloodied but alive. "You saw it too," the beta whispered, his voice sharp with unease. "Her voice is no gift. It's a weapon." The rival's lips twisted into a cruel smile. "A weapon that doesn't belong to Lucian." The beta hesitated only for a breath before nodding, his loyalty shifting in the darkness. "Then we'll take her together." Above them, the moon hid behind the clouds as if keeping their secret. The camera lingers on the beta's hand, clasping the rival alphas in a pact of betrayal. Their voices echo in the dark. She will be ours, and with her voice, the Alpha King will fall. The pact sealed in darkness had consequences before the moon waned. That night, while the palace slept under the veil of heavy silence, she stirred restlessly in Lucian's chambers. Dreams plagued her, visions of voices tearing through battlefields, wolves falling at her scream, and shadows whispering her name. She bolted upright, clutching the blankets to her chest, heart hammering. But Lucian wasn't there. The fireplace flickered low, and his scent lingered faintly. Fading toward the council hall. He must have been summoned again. She pressed her hands to her face, trying to steady herself. That was when the window creaked open. A cold gust swept through the room. Before she could scream, a hand clamped over her mouth. "Quiet, little Mika," a voice hissed, dripping with cruel amusement. Her body thrashed, but iron-strong arms bound her, dragging her toward the open balcony. The last thing she saw was the flickering firelight swallowing the empty chamber. Lucian's safe haven vanishing into the night. When her senses returned, she was thrown against stone. The scent of damp earth and old blood filled her lungs. A dungeon. Torches burned along the walls, casting long shadows. And there, sitting like a king of Rod upon a cracked throne, was the rival Alpha, his smile cut like a blade. So fragile, so human, and yet he leaned closer, eyes glinting with hunger. "That voice of yours shattered warriors. That power doesn't belong to Lucian. It belongs to me." Chains clinked as she was forced to her knees. Her wrists burned where silver shackles bound her, searing against her skin. Her throat tightened. "You can't take what isn't yours." His laugh echoed through the chamber, dark and booming. "Can't I? You think the moon goddess bound you to him? No, girl. You were always meant to be mine." Her breath faltered, fear mixing with fury. "You're lying." The rival Alpha's smile deepened. He leaned closer, his voice a venomous whisper. "Am I? Ask yourself why your blood sings with power no human should possess. Ask yourself why the Alpha King protects you so fiercely. Do you even know who your father was?" Her eyes widened, blood chilling in her veins. Her father, the man she barely remembered, whose death her mother never spoke of, whose absence was a hollow silence in her past. The rival Alpha's hand gripped her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. "Your father was not who you think he was, and I knew him well." Her heart slammed against her. "Ribs, what do you mean?" she whispered. But before he could answer, the dungeon doors burst open, Lucian's furious roar shaking the walls. The rival Alpha yanked her close, a blade flashing against her throat, his lips curling into a smirk. "Tell him, little Mika. Tell him the truth, that your father's blood runs with wolves." The cold press of steel grazed her throat. Her pulse thudded against the blade as Lucian's growl echoed through the chamber. "Release her now!" The rival Alpha only smirked, pulling her closer so that her hair brushed against his armor. His voice was low, dripping with venom meant to wound more than steel ever could. Lucian, you should know better than to claim what carries tainted blood. This girl's father, he wasn't the simple man her mother claimed. He was a traitor, a wolf who bartered secrets to humans. Secrets that led to the death of the last Mika queen. Her breath hitched. The last Mika queen. Lucian's body stiffened, fury warring with disbelief. You lie. Do I? The rival sneered, tightening his grip. His eyes flicked to her, sharp and cruel. Your father was the reason the queen's palace burned. The reason she screens her last under the moonlight, while rogues tore her apart. That curse runs through you, girl, and it will finish what he started. Her chest squeezed, every word slashing deeper than the blade at her skin. She could barely breathe. She remembered her mother's haunted silence whenever she asked about him. The unanswered questions, the missing pieces of her childhood. Could this monster be speaking the truth? Lucian stepped forward, his aura thickening until the torches flickered violently. Say another word, and I will rip your tongue from your skull. But her body betrayed her, trembling violently, not just from fear, but from the echo of something deep within. A whisper that told her the rival alpha wasn't lying. Her voice cracked. What? What do you mean? My blood is cursed. The rival alpha grinned. Your power doesn't come from the moon goddess's blessing. It comes from the screams of the damned. Every time you use it, every time you unleash that voice, you are feeding the curse that killed the queen. One day, it won't save. It will destroy. The chamber spun. A curse. Her bloodline. Damned. Her knees weakened, but rage flared, where despair threatened to swallow her. She refused to be a pawn in his cruelty. Her lips parted, trembling. But not with fear, with resolve. The rival alpha's eyes widened a split second before the air cracked. A sound tore from her throat. Not a scream, but a wave of raw, shattering force. The shackles around her wrists exploded into shards. The stone walls quaked, torchlight snuffing out in bursts. The rival alpha staggered back, clutching his ears, his blade clattering to the ground. Lucian lunged, catching her before she collapsed from the force of her own power. His voice was rough, desperate. Don't ever believe him. You are not your father. But her own words chilled her more than the dungeon's air, as she whispered, trembling, "What if I am?" In the silence, blood trickled from her lips. Her reflection in the broken steel showed her eyes glowing faintly silver. The same cursed glow the rival alpha had spoken of. But Chamber was eerily silent, broken only by the sound of her own ragged breaths. Silver light still pulsed faintly in her eyes, a ghostly shimmer she couldn't erase. Lucian gripped her shoulders, his touch grounding yet trembling with unspoken fear. "You are not cursed," he said firmly, his voice more command than comfort. "The goddess wouldn't bind you to me if you were." But his words barely pierced the storm inside her. Her father's betrayal, the rival alpha's sneer, the silver glow. It all clawed at her mind like a noose tightening. Then, as if the goddess herself answered her turmoil, the ground beneath them trembled. A voice, neither male nor female, rolled through the stone walls like thunder. "Daughter of mortal blood, stand before me." Every torch in the chamber extinguished at once, plunging them into darkness, except for her. The silver light within her flared, casting eerie patterns across the stone. Lucian stiffened, jaw clenched. "The moon trial," he whispered, dread in his eyes. She swallowed hard. "What's that?" His hand tightened around hers. "A trial no mortal has ever survived." Before she could protest, a beam of pale light shot down through the ceiling, as though the heavens had split open. It wrapped around her, searing cold and blinding bright, pulling her upward. Her scream tore through the chamber as she was lifted into nothingness. leaving Lucian's outstretched hand grasping empty air. When she opened her eyes again, she was standing barefoot on a vast silver lake. The sky above was endless, filled with a swollen moon that pulsed like a lee. "Living heart," the voice spoke again, surrounding her. "The blood of betrayal runs in your veins, but the bond of fate binds you to my chosen king. Will you serve or will you destroy?" She staggered back, her reflection rippling on the lake's surface. Her own face stared up at her, but with silver fire in its eyes, a cruel smile curling its lips. "You are cursed," her reflection whispered, mocking. "Every voice you release brings ruin." "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "That's not me." The reflection's smile widened. "Then prove it." The lake erupted, silver flames roaring around her. Her knees buckled under the weight of the goddess's gaze, her chest burning as if her very soul was being scorched. She screamed once, twice, and then crumpled onto the glowing surface. Her body shuddered, life draining away, her voice cracking into silence. Somewhere far away, she thought she heard Lucian calling her name, raw and desperate. But her vision blurred, darkness clawing at the edges. She fell until something deep inside her snapped. Her chest ignited, not with pain, but with power. Silver fire burst from her skin, curling like living wings. The lake blazed with light as her body lifted from the surface, suspended by flames that did not burn, but healed. Her reflection shattered like glass, and the moon itself seemed to bow. Her eyes snapped open. No longer just human, no longer just cursed. Silver fire crowned her as she floated above the lake, but the goddess's voice whispered one last warning. Power always demands a price. Silver fire still clung to her skin when her feet touched the earth again. Her chest heaved, every breath tasting of smoke and moonlight. The trial's leg vanished like a dream, leaving her back in the dark stone chamber, sprawled against Lucian's chest. He held her as if he'd been holding his breath for eternity, his strong arms trembling. His face, usually carved in iron, was pale with something rarer than fear, desperation. "Don't you ever." His voice cracked. He buried his face in her hair, inhaling as if to prove she was real. "Don't you ever leave me like that again." Her hands, still glowing faintly, curled against him. For the first time, she didn't resist. "I didn't choose it," she whispered. "The goddess pulled me in." Lucian pulled back, just enough to look at her. His eyes were molten gold, blazing. "I felt you. Every scream, every heartbeat, even before the flight, I felt you all my life, and I didn't understand why until now." Her breath caught. Before the flight, he nodded, his gaze locked to hers. Dreams, whispers, a pull I couldn't escape. "When I saw you asleep beside me on that plane, I knew my wolf knew. You weren't a stranger. You were fate." Her heart pounded, the bond thrumming between them like a living thing, tugging at the edges of her fear. She wanted to fight it, wanted to deny it, but the truth glowed in his eyes, and worse, in her body's traitorous response. The space between them vanished, his forehead pressing to hers. The fire of the bond burned brighter, wrapping around them both. Every wall she built cracked under the weight of it. She gasped, caught between fear and hunger. And then his lips brushed hers, hesitant, reverent, like touching something sacred. Her knees weakened, her hands fisted in his shirt. The kiss deepened, fierce and consuming, not gentle, but claiming. The bond surged, the fire within her answering his, and for a moment the world shrank to just them. Two souls colliding, the goddess's prophecy thrumming in every breath. But the chamber doors burst open. Council members stormed in, eyes widening at the sight of the silver fire still curling faintly around her. Their whispers filled the hall like snakes. She survived the moon trial. She carries the mark. She cannot be human. Lucian rose to his full height, pulling her protectively against him. his golden eyes daring anyone to challenge her. "She is mine." The council's eldest member stepped forward, staff clanging against the floor. His gaze pinned her hard and unyielding. "If she is Mika," he said, his voice echoing with authority, "then let her prove it." Her stomach twisted. "Prove it!" The elder's words struck like thunder. If she is Mika, she must lead the war. The chamber erupted in gasps, whispers, and shock. Lucian stiffened beside her, fury flashing across his face. She stared at the council, her skin still glowing faintly, her lips tingling from his kiss, only for her world to shatter with the weight of their decree. The council's judgment hangs heavy in the chamber, and the elder's voice seals her fate. If she fails, she dies. The council's words still echoed in the stone chamber like the toll of a funeral bell. If she is Mika, she must lead the war. The declaration fractured the room. Some council members shouted in protest. Others nodded grimly, but every pair of eyes burned into her as if she were no longer a girl, but a weapon to be tested. Lucian's growls silenced them all. "She will not be your pawn," he snarled, golden eyes blazing. Yet even his defiance could not erase the truth. They had lit a fire she could not extinguish. Before she could speak, a scout stumbled into the chamber, bloodied and breathless. His words dropped like a blade. The rival Alpha, he has forged an alliance. Old enemies march at his side. War drums beat in the north. The chamber erupted into chaos. Counselors demanded action. Warriors roared, and she stood frozen. The sound of war drums thrumming in her chest, as if the goddess herself pounded them there. That night, the Pax Fortress trembled with preparation. Armories opened. Horns sounded. Wolves in steel and leather filled the courtyards. Lucian led his generals in war strategy, but it was her presence that drew whispers. She could feel their stares, the untested human, but cursed voice, the girl marked by silver fire. When dawn broke, she found herself standing before the Omega ranks, those the Pat dismissed as weak, burdened with the lowest roles. Their eyes met hers, and in them she saw her reflection, the unwanted, the underestimated. Her heart hammered, fear clawing her throat, but the bond within her pulsed, demanding more. She stepped forward. "They think we don't belong," she said, her voice trembling, then strengthening. "They think we are powerless. But tonight, when the drums beat, they will know our strength." Her voice carried, charged with the faint silver hum of the goddess's mark. The Omega straightened, their spines stiffening, their eyes blazing with a fire they buried too long. By the time she finished, their fists pounded their chests, their voices rising in a chant that rolled through the fortress like thunder. From the walls, warriors and counselors turned to look, not at Lucian, not at their generals, but at her. For the first time, she wasn't the human girl dragged into their world. She wasn't even just the Alpha's chosen mate. She was something else, something rising. Lucian's gaze found hers across the chaos. Fierce pride softening the fury in his eyes. But pride wasn't the only thing her rally had ignited. She felt the weight of it instantly. Every whisper, every glare, every unseen blade now aimed at her back. Because in that moment, she had crossed a line. She wasn't hiding in a shadow anymore. She had stepped into the light, and the light painted a target. As the war drums thunder outside the fortress walls, a cloaked figure slips unseen through the shadows of her chamber, a dagger glinting with venom. Her rally has made her the first to be struck. The chant of the Omegas still rang in her ears as she returned to her chamber, their defiance of fire still burning in her chest. But as the heavy doors shut behind her, the sound of the war drums outside seemed closer, louder, as though they weren't at the gates, but inside her very walls. A breath, too close, Too quiet. She spun, but too late. A cloaked figure lunged from the shadows, dagger glinting in the torchlight. Silver venom dripped from its edge. She cried out. Stumbling back, her hand flying instinctively to the pendant at her throat, the one that pulsed faintly with the moon goddess's mark. Just before the dagger struck, Lucian burst through the door. His growl split the night, his claws unshaved as he ripped the assassin away. The clash was brutal, quick, and bloody. When the cloak fell, her blood iced. It wasn't a rival wolf. It was one of their own. The beta, Lucian's most trusted brother in arms. Why? Her voice cracked as she stared at him. The beta's snarl was bitter, broken. Because you'll destroy us all. She's a curse, Lucian. Can't you see? She'll be our ruin. His eyes flicked to her with venom. Better I end her than watch us all burn. Before Lucian could respond, a horn wailed, louder, deeper than the war drums. The fortress shook as gates crashed open. Betrayal had not been whispered in shadows. It had been carved into steel. The beta had opened the gates. Chaos exploded. Enemy wolves poured into the fortress. The roar of battle shook the stones. Lucian shoved her back. Stay behind me. But there was no behind anymore. Blood sprayed across the walls as warriors fell. The clash of steel and the snap of jaws blurred into a nightmare. In the storm, Lucian fought like the king he was. But even kings could bleed. The rival Alpha himself surged through the carnage, his blade meeting Lucian's. Their battle was savage, raw, shaking the hall with every strike. She screamed his name as blood spattered the floor. The rival's blade sank deep into Lucian's side. His roar tore through the chamber, but it was followed by silence. He staggered, knees buckling, golden eyes finding hers. "Run," he gasped, blood trailing from his lips. "Live." She fell to her knees beside him, her trembling hands pressing against the wind, her vision blurred with tears. Around them, the fortress collapsed into chaos. Wolves howling, fire spreading, steel clashing. The man who had claimed her, the Alpha King of New York, the only anchor she had in this madness, was crumpled at her feet. And in that moment, she felt the world demand an answer from her. She could run as the human girl she had always been, or she could rise as the might the fate had chosen her to become. The bond burned hot in her chest, screaming for her to decide. With Lucian bleeding beneath her, enemies closing in and the fortress aflame, she grips the dagger, fallen from the beta's hand, standing torn between running for her life or turning to fight for his. The dagger was cold in her trembling hand, slick with the beta's betrayal. Fire roared through the fortress, shadows dancing like specters along the crumbling stone. Lucian lay at her knees, his breath shallow, blood pouring from his side. "Run," he rasped again, his golden eyes dimming. But something inside her snapped. Run. She had been running her whole life from grief, from fear, from her own shadow. But not anymore. Not with him dying, not with his people falling around her. Her pulse hammered like war drums. The dagger weighed nothing in her hand now. It felt like an extension of her will. "No," she whispered, rising to her feet. Her voice wavered at first, but then it hardened. No more running. An enemy wolf lunged at her, jaws snapping. She stepped forward, her scream ripping through the hall. Raw, desperate, and impossibly powerful. The very air. The very air cracked. The wolf dropped mid-leap, writhing, bowing as if shackled by invisible chains. Gasps rippled across the battlefield. Dozens of eyes turned toward her. Her voice echoed again, louder, deeper, filled with something more than human. "Stand with me." And to her horror and awe, wolves did. Warriors mid-battle froze, their heads dipping, their knees bending. Even enemy wolves faltered, confusion painting their snarls. The power in her voice was no curse. It was command. The Omegas, the lowest of the low, surged forward first, rallying to her side with renewed fury. Her words wrapped around them like armor, their howls uniting in a chorus that shook the walls. She raised the dagger high, blood-stained and glinting in the firelight. "For the king!" she cried, pointing it at the rival Alpha. The chamber erupted. Her words had become a weapon sharper than steel. The pack rallied, striking harder, faster. Enemies stumbled, their formation breaking. For a moment, hope sparked in the carnage. But then the rival Alpha's voice boomed over the chaos. "Do you see? She is not human. She carries the mark of the silent Mika." His eyes gleamed as he pointed at her. The prophecy lives in her veins. She froze, the dagger quivering in her hand. Dozens of gazes pierced into her, some with awe, others with fear. And then Lucian's broken whisper reached her. "Your eyes." Confused, she turned toward him, only to catch her reflection in a shard of shattered glass. Her pupils had vanished, her irises burning silver like liquid moonlight. The hall went silent, even in the midst of battle. The mark of the Alpha bloodline stared back at her through her own eyes. She wasn't just human anymore. With her silver-lit eyes blazing before the entire court of wolves, both ally and enemy, she realizes the impossible truth. The Alpha bloodline lives within her. The fire crackled against stone, but no one moved. Warriors, Omegas, even enemies, all stood still, their eyes fixed on her. The reflection of her silver-lit gaze stared back at her in the broken shard. Alien, yet familiar, like something that had always been buried within. Her breath hitched. "What am I?" The rival Alpha's voice shattered the silence. "Do you see? She is no human. She is the goddess's cursed heir." His wolves snarled, emboldened by his fury. But the New York pack didn't move. Half bowed lower in reverence. The other half stepped back in fear. Lucian groaned on the ground, reaching for her, his hand trembling. "Don't be afraid. The moon chose you." And then the world seemed to vanish. The smoke, the flames, the screams, all blinked away. She stood alone in a vast expanse of silver light. Stars spun overhead, endless and eternal. At the center of it, a woman cloaked in moonlight descended, her face both terrifying and breathtaking. The moon goddess. Her voice echoed like thunder and silk, child of the forgotten bloodline. "Daughter of the betrayed. You are not a mistake. You are the silent Mika reborn." Her knees buckled. "No, that's impossible. My father was just—" The goddess's eyes burned into hers. "Your father betrayed me. He hid you, spilling royal blood so you would never be claimed, never rise to the throne, fated to you. His cowardice cost your people their queen." Tears burned down her cheeks. Her father's lies, his distance, his silence, it all made sense now. "Why me?" she whispered. "Why bind me to him? I'm not ready. I don't want this." The goddess's tone sharpened, the air vibrating with power. "The bond you share with the Alpha King is no accident. It will unite or destroy every wolf under the moon. Your voice is both salvation and ruin. The choice will be yours." The light flared, searing her vision. Her chest ached, her heart thundering against her ribs. And then she was back. Back in the burning hall. Back in the chaos. Lucian bleeding beneath her. The rival Alpha sneered. "Look at her. Even the goddess marks her as a weapon. She will kill us all." Gasps echoed through the pack. Doubt rippled. Wolves pulled back from her. Uncertainty etched on their faces. Was she savior or doom? Lucian's golden gaze locked on her through the haze of pain. You heard her, didn't you? His voice was hoarse but resolute. Tell me, is our bond life or death? Her silver eyes glowed brighter, her throat tightening with the weight of the goddess's words. She opened her mouth, and the entire chamber held its breath. With every wolf watching, she realizes the truth of the prophecy. Her bond with Lucian will either save the wolves or annihilate them all. The silence pressed heavy on her chest. Every gaze, fearful, reverent, accusing, burned into her as the prophecy's weight sat on her shoulders. Before she could speak, the rival Alpha's roar split the chamber. She is no Mika. She is a weapon of doom. He surged forward, his clawed hands striking the ground. Runes carved into the earth flared crimson. Spreading like cracks of fire, the floor split open. Shadows writhed, rising with bone and fang. Ancient beasts, things of legend, slithered free, their eyes like pits of night. Wolves shrieked and scattered, the pack thrown into chaos. Lucian tried to rise, blood soaking his chest. Don't. His voice broke into a cough. He staggered but still reached for her. Stay with me. But rough hands seized her wrists. The rival Alpha yanked her against him. His breath hot and cruel against her ear. Your blood is the key. You think the goddess chose you? No, she cursed you. And tonight I'll use your blood to end him and every wolf who bows to him. Pain seared as he slashed her palm, her blood dripping onto the runes. The beasts writhed stronger, their roars shaking the earth. Chains of shadow wrapped her limbs, dragging her to her knees as her strength drained. No, Lucian bellowed, his golden aura blazing as he hurled himself forward. Wolves from both sides clashed, steel and fang colliding, the hall turning into a war zone. Yet all she saw was Lucian, bleeding, desperate, his eyes locked on hers. The beasts lunged, massive and monstrous, tearing through soldiers. One struck Lucian across the chest, hurling him back into the stone wall. Her breath hitched, the world blurring. The prophecy, the choice, salvation or ruin. Her throat burned, her voice aching to be freed. She closed her eyes, tears streaking through ash and blood. If my voice can end this, then let it. Chains shattered as silver fire surged through her veins. She rose, her entire body glowing, her hair whipping like a storm. And then she screamed. Her voice was not human. It was a tidal wave of sound and light. The beasts shrieked, their shadows ripping apart, their bodies crumbling into ash under the sheer force. The ground quaked, walls splitting, warriors frozen in awe and terror. Dot. The rival Alpha staggered back, his ears bleeding, his runes shattering beneath her cry. He howled once, then disintegrated, consumed by her power. And then, silence. Her glow dimmed, her knees buckled. The world tilted. No! Lucian's voice ripped through the chaos as he crawled to her, catching her limp body in his arms. Blood dripped from his lips, his hands shaking as he pressed her to his chest. Her eyes fluttered once, faint silver fading to human brown. Her lips parted as if to whisper his name, then stilled. Lucian's scream tore the sky as he clutched her lifeless form. The battlefield frozen in the aftermath of her unleashed divinity. The beasts are gone, the rival Alpha destroyed, but she collapses lifeless in Lucian's arms. Her sacrifice leaving the fate of wolves hanging by a thread. The battlefield was a graveyard of silence. Smoke curled from broken stone. Blood stained the earth. And in the center of it all, The Alpha King knelt, clutching her lifeless body. "Wound goddess, take me instead," Lucian rasped, his voice breaking as his golden aura flickered. His hand trembled against her cheek, desperate to feel warmth. Around him, wolves bowed their heads, mourning not only their queen, but their salvation. Then, silver light pierced the horizon. It began as a single thread glowing across her skin, weaving into the mark on her chest. Her body lifted in his arms, hair fanning as though caught in an unseen wind. Every wolf raised their head as the battlefield turned silver bright, shadows fleeing into nothing. The moon goddess's voice rippled through the air. "The silent Micah is no curse. She is the balance. She is the bridge between the human and the eternal." Lucian's heart thundered. He reached upward, his voice raw. "Bring her back to me. Please bring her back." Her eyes snapped open. Brilliant silver, not brown. She gasped, pulling in breath as if for the first time. Her scream had taken her life. But the goddess's light had returned it. She floated gently down, her bare feet touching the ground, a crown of moonlight settling upon her brow. The entire pack dropped to their knees, warriors and enemies alike, murmuring in reverence, "Micah, Queen, chosen." Lucian, Alpha King of New York, bowed before her. For the first time, he bent his head, not in dominance, but in surrender. His voice was low, trembling with devotion. "No longer mine to claim. You are my equal, my queen." Tears streaked her cheeks as she reached for him, pulling him to stand beside her. Together, hand in hand, they turned to face the remnants of battle. Her voice, no longer destructive, but commanding, carried like thunder across the ruins. "This city has a Micah, not of bloodline, not of birthright, but of choice. And I choose to protect every soul under this moon." The wolves howled, one after another, until the night was filled with an anthem of allegiance. The broken were healed. The fallen honored. The prophecy fulfilled. For a fleeting heartbeat, it felt like peace. But then, amid the ruins where shadow had once gathered, something stirred. The earth hissed, and from the shattered runes of the rival Alpha's spell, a voice slithered into the night. The voice that saves will also destroy. Her crown of moonlight flickered, and her silver eyes widened. The victory was theirs, but destiny, it seemed, was not finished with her. She awakens, reborn, crowned in moonlight as the Micah Queen. But the whisper of darkness from the ruins warns that her voice, her greatest gift, may yet become the doom of them all. If you enjoyed listening to this story, please hit the like button, share it with someone who'd love this, and subscribe to Nightbond Narratives and ring the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Tell me in the comments below which part of the world you are watching from. Also tell me which part of the story you like the most.